Not yet. Hey, tribe. Welcome to our live. So, this evening, we are doing a reading from What Cheese? We did this last week, or not last week, 2 weeks ago. We do this every other week. And we ended up stopping where the girls are getting to the bridge. So, we stopped with that point, and I think we're going to pick up right there. I might give everybody a couple minutes to get in. I hope everybody had a good week. Couple of announcements that I think I need to make. We are memory marquee. So we did talk about that. But you can now see us on our channel at Memory Marquee. Marquee is MARQUEE, and you can feel free to go there, check us out. You can subscribe. Start your legacy today if you want to. So that is my commercial for Memory Marquee. We're doing really well too. I'm super excited. So make sure that you go there, check out all of the shorts. And then the first video is the one that kind of tells the story, and you get to see exactly what it is that we do. And then you can go through and see our website as well. All right. So everybody hopefully is in here. We are going to read a decent chunk of this. We are pretty much at the middle of the book. Remember, the book that we're reading tonight is What Cheese? For those to whom motivation remains elusive. And we will also be working on the character guided workbook for What Cheese as well. All right. So
she loves Memory Marquee. The commercial is everything. Great job.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that people like it. I'm surprised because not surprised because I didn't think anyone would like it, but surprised by the fact that it's getting a lot of views already. So we've had it up there for about a week and we're doing really well. Super excited. All right. So hopefully we'll have some subscribers and all of those things as well. And we'll be making plenty of movies. We're going to do some examples and have those live as well. All right. So here we go. Thank you. Thank you. We are starting at the bridge. So here we go. It's here that we find them one afternoon on a day like any other. The bridge stretched ahead like a dare, shrouded in a blanket of fog. Its edges disappeared into the mist, barely visible, but still calling out, urging them to take the first step. It was as if the very air around it held its breath, waiting for their decision. The drawbridge, its workings hidden from sight, remained a mystery to those who crossed. The thick ropes and pulleys that kept it suspended in place were unseen, their mechanics concealed beneath the weight of the fog. Unbeknownst to them, once they stepped onto the bridge, they'd be bound by its fate, a path that could not be reversed. There would be no turning back. The maze, with all its comfortable deception and accepted uncertainties, would be left behind. The water below was so clear that fish moved through it like shadows, their bodies flickering in the sunlight, serene and untouched by the turmoil above. Gotcha stood at the edge, one boot balanced carefully as if she were considering the very weight of the journey ahead. She stood with her arms crossed, her ears still, the silence hanging heavily between them all. Everything okay over there?
Yeah. Kaylani is here.
Okay.
Jordan is here.
Okay.
And your son-in-law says hello. It's Jermaine Dupree.
Welcome, everybody. And we do not have JD with us tonight. All right. All right. So back to where we were. She stood with her arms crossed, her ears still. Is that where we were? Okay. Her ears still, the silence hanging heavily between them all. Fear often stops us in our tracks, she said, her voice steady and calm, but carrying a quiet authority. If you were unafraid, what would you try? The question hung in the air, unanswered at first. The mist seemed to thicken as if waiting for someone to break the silence. Then Aware stepped forward first, her fingers absent-mindedly playing with the chain in her pocket. The metal glinted faintly in the dim light, the sound of it sliding between her fingers like a signal of readiness. I'd lead, she said, her voice firm. Not just light the way, I'd walk it first. She stood, strong and assured like a beacon in the fog. Next, Insecure hesitated, her eyes dropping to the ground before slowly raising them. The weight of her words heavy on her lips. She wasn't used to being this open, but today, something was different. I'd let others see me, All of me, even the parts I keep trying to edit out. Her voice was quieter now, almost vulnerable, but there was a strength in her admission. Elades held the worry stone in her hand, her fingers trembling around it. She closed her fist around the stone, squeezing it for courage. I'd speak up, say what I feel before it's polished and pretty. Her words were raw, unrefined, but there was relief in saying them aloud. Serene shifted her weight slightly, the blade of grass she always kept in her mouth barely moving. Her eyes were calm, her voice unhurried. I'd stop acting like I got all the time in the world. I'd move. Even slow is faster than stuck. Her gaze never wavered as she spoke, the truth in her words clear. Gotcha nodded once, a subtle gesture that signified understanding. Then walk. No grand speeches, no final words of wisdom, just the simple, just the simple command to move forward, to take that first step. One by one, they stepped forward, their feet carrying them across the bridge without hesitation. The mist didn't part, the world hadn't shifted, but something within each of them did. The colors on the water were astonishing, an endless parade of hues, shifting and shimmering as if the sunset itself were pouring molten gold and liquid fire into the lake. No one among them had ever seen anything like it. The colors stretched and collapsed, danced and disappeared, in shades no words could properly name. They stood, a small gathering of wide eyes and slack mouths, utterly mesmerized. It seemed wrong to even blink, as though they might miss a secret stitched into the threads of the water. They watched the fish too, bright flashes of silver, blue and yellow gliding effortlessly just beneath the glassy surface. The water was so clear it seemed as though the fish were suspended in midair, caught in some delicate spell. In their wonder, they did not see the signs posted at the entrance to the old stone bridge, the one that stated plainly enough that they were leaving the sanctioned grounds of the maze and were crossing into Neva Neva, a place spoken of only in warnings and worst-case scenarios. If they had paid closer attention, they might have read more. They might have seen the notice, printed in weathered black lettering, that after sunset the bridge would rise, severing the way back. Not out of cruelty, but out of a desire to discourage the kind of travel that led to regret. There was another sign, one far easier to miss, half buried behind a heavy draping of purple blossoms, whose intoxicating scent muddled the senses and lulled the mind. It had been posted in careful script. The ramp back closes soon. Proceed with full awareness. This was everything the elders had warned about. Everything whispered between the lines of every cautionary story, every stern lecture that had once made them roll their eyes or nod absent-mindedly. The reason for the endless nagging reminders to keep their heads down, to stay neatly folded within the safe, familiar quarters of the maze. Their comfort had been their undoing. The easy rhythm of their days, the unthinking repetition of habit, had dulled their vigilance. Somewhere along the line, they had forgotten one of the sacred tale's cardinal truths. Change is not good without a plan. A simple edict, easy enough to say, it is much harder to live by when the sky burned in impossible colors and curiosity pulled stronger than caution. Being unaware, that was what kept most of their kind safe. That instinctive leaning toward safety, toward the tried and true, had been bred into them like a survival mechanism. Awareness requires effort. It demanded constant checking, questioning. It was exhausting. And so they had slipped, lulled into wonder, unaware, unprepared. The grinding sound reached them first, low and mechanical, like the clearing of some great metallic throat. They turned in time to see the bridge groaning into motion, its gears shrieking under the strain as it slowly, inexorably lifted away from the far bank. Panic snapped through them. They scanned the edges of the lake, searching desperately for another route, another way back. But there was none. They had already missed that last opportunity. They just hadn't noticed. How had this happened? When they finally turned and looked back at the way they had come, they saw clearly how far they had wandered, how deeply they had crossed into the unknown. The high walls of the maze, those familiar, comforting barriers, loomed now like the gates of a fortress, not keeping them safe, keeping them out. The maze had been the safety net all along. The sacred tale had explained it so plainly. It simply was a given, a boundary, a home. But familiarity had bred carelessness. Okay, saying familiarity and carelessness in the same sentence is a bit much. But familiarity bred carelessness. Routine had lulled them into thinking safety was their right rather than their responsibility. And now they had no way back. Here they stood outside the maze, unprepared. They had become so comfortable living their relatively new lives that they didn't even have time to think about the maze, the sacred tale, or the cheese they now earned for the work they performed. What would they ever see the towers again? The question hung heavily in the air between them, in uncertainty no one dared to voice aloud, but all felt settled deep in their chest. Had they gone past the point of no return? The words tasted sour, even in thought. A bitter recognition that the world they had known, the safe, structured life nestled within the maze and anchored by the unwavering presence of the towers, might now be permanently beyond their reach. What would this mean for their futures? They had been so focused on shaping their little corners of comfort, on arranging their lives just so, they had forgotten the very thing that had made these communities possible in the first place: structure, boundaries, the invisible scaffolding that kept chaos at bay. They had been so certain of their place that they no longer remembered the ground it was built upon. And now they stood adrift beyond the walls, and the roadmap back had dissolved behind them like a morning mist.
We have a new viewer.
How would they ever make it back?
Desiree is in.
Hey, Des, welcome. All right. The clearing. They huddled together in a tight cluster, shrinking beneath the sprawling trees, the last rays of sunlight retreating fast into a dense, creeping dusk. Their breath came shallowly. This, they thought, must be what the end feels like. Not violent, not sudden, just a slow, steady collapse of everything familiar. It was then that they heard it. Voices threading their way through the trees, carried on the faintest whisper of a breeze, laughter, snippets of conversation, bright and unbothered like sunlight filtering through storm clouds. Instinct warred with hope. Should they hide? Should they call out? Before they could decide, the figures emerged from the forest. They came through the trees as though they belonged there, moving easily, like the world had never once conspired against them. Faith, hope, and love. They had never been happier to see others. Relief surged through them so sharply it was almost painful. The sight of happy faces, the gentle steadiness in their eyes, cracked the hard shell of panic that had begun to form. In a voice so soft it barely stirred the leaves around her, Insecure stepped forward and asked, "Do you know a way to get back into the maze, into the towers? We didn't realize we had traveled so far out of the zone and are unable to return. We've never been out this far and need help getting back in." Faith answered, her voice carrying that calm certainty that made even the impossible sound manageable. She smiled, a slow, reassuring curve of the mouth, and told them they were safe. Told them that she, hope, and love were themselves coming home from a trip outside the maze, describing it with the casualness of someone recounting an afternoon stroll through a familiar neighborhood. No terror, no regret, just experience. The girls stared, uncertain if they had heard correctly. Leave the maze, return. It had always been painted as a one-way journey, a trapdoor that once fallen through could never be opened again. But Faith and the others made no mention of danger or doom, only of preparation, of patience, and of knowing the past the others could not see. They advised the girls to stay for the night, to rest here just outside the maze's walls. No rush, no fear. The older girls helped them settle in, gathering dried branches for a fire and sharing what little food they had carried back from their journey. The clearing pulsed with a quiet kind of magic, the fragile but persistent kind that rises only when hope dares to breathe again. For the first time in hours, the girls allowed themselves to sit, to eat, to listen. Maybe, just maybe, the road back was not entirely gone. Maybe the maze was not the only safe place after all. The fire popped like it had secrets of its own. They sat in a loose circle, some on mossy stumps, others on stones worn soft from years of waiting. No one said much at first. There was no need. The fire carried the hush. Love moved slowly around them, adjusting logs, adding lavender sprigs to the flames, letting the scent float upward like incense. Her peace symbol headband slipped, and without looking, Hope reached out to nudge it gently back into place. Orare smiled. Faith watched the newcomers quietly, her pearl hoops catching the glow like moons. Serene stretched her legs, leaning back on her palms. Gachu sat close to the edge like she always did, her ears listening for anything unspoken. Love turned toward the group, her eyes steady, kind. What causes you the most pain? She asked gently. No one answered right away. The question wasn't demanding, it was an invitation. She let it sit there for a moment, then slowly turned her gaze toward Faith. Faith didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, her earrings catching the firelight like signals. Her fingers touched the pearl bracelet on her wrist. Hope's gift. I've always heard something, she said softly, something no one else could hear. A voice that told me more was out there. Not cheese, not comfort, not when everyone else called enough. But no one believed me. They told me to quiet down, told me it was my imagination, that my dreams were just noise. She looked up. What causes me the most pain is being told to silence the sound of my own soul. Silence again, but this time it held them like a blanket. And the fire didn't just warm their skin, it softened their walls. The fire cracked low, its embers pulsing like tiny hearts in the hush of the evening. Shadows danced along the curve of the trees, and a soft breeze rustled through the clearing, wrapping the group in a warm, living silence. Camp had been set, dinner shared. Now came the part that always mattered most, the stories. They sat in a loose circle, blankets draped over their shoulders, eyes turned toward the flame. It was Faith who leaned forward first, her pearl hoops glinting in the firelight, the familiar bracelet from Hope resting at her wrist like a tether. She took a breath, not a shallow one, but deep, like she was pulling from someplace buried. I wasn't always with the others, she began, voice low and steady, though a flicker trembled beneath it. There came a time when I heard something, the voice I couldn't explain. It didn't shout, it whispered, but it spoke with more truth than anything I'd ever known. She paused, eyes glistening now, fixed on a point just beyond the fire. The group leaned in, not out of curiosity, but out of reverence. I told them, everyone I loved, I told them I heard it, this voice, this call, that it told me to move, to leave everything behind and walk where I'd never walked before. But they didn't believe me, not one. Faith's voice cracked on the last word, and she clenched her jaw, trying to hold it in, whatever it was that haunted her. They said I was imagining it, that I was chasing shadows, that no one leaves the nesting area so close to the maze and all of its opportunities. Why would they? Her hands, usually so sure, now fidgeted in her lap. I was scared, she admitted, voice raw, but I left anyway. Alone, no map, no guide, just that voice and a feeling in my chest that wouldn't let me stay. She tried to continue, lips parting to speak again, but the words caught, lodged like thorns in her throat. Her breath hitched, her eyes, wide and blazing moments ago, were now filled with tears she refused to let fall. Then, before the silence could stretch too far, Love reached out gently, instinctively, and placed her hand on Faith's knee. Their eyes met. May I? Love asked softly. Faith nodded once, unable to speak, but grateful. Love turned to the group, her voice a balm, smooth, warm, unshaken. She left with nothing but the belief that she was being called into something more. And she didn't just walk out of the nest, she walked through herself, through doubt, through loneliness, through nights where her only companions were the stars and the ache in her bones. She slept under trees, drank from cold rivers, listened to silence until it started to sing, and still she kept going. Love's voice dropped, but it carried like a prayer. Faith didn't need proof, she needed purpose. And when no one else stood beside her, she stood for herself. The firelight danced across Faith's cheeks, highlighting the tears that had finally fallen. She didn't wipe them away, she let them stay, glistening like testimony. Love smiled and reached for her friend's hand, and when she arrived, when she found us, it wasn't because she'd been lost, it was because she'd been led. Silence settled again, not empty but full, thick with honor, a silence that wrapped itself around Faith like a shawl and whispered, "You were never alone." And in that moment, everyone in the circle felt it, the courage it takes to walk by faith, and the power of being loved through the journey. Yay. Yeah, no matter what. Sometimes we have to step out on those things. Faith. Love began. Allow me to introduce you to Faith, a mouse like no other. From the moment she burst into the world, Faith wasn't seeking answers. She was already chasing the next horizon. There was nothing timid or tentative about her arrival. While other babies wailed for warmth or food, Faith emerged with the presence that filled the room. Her eyes didn't search, they claimed. Fierce and focused, they scanned her new surroundings like a map waiting to be charted. She wasn't wondering where she'd come from. She was sizing up where she was going next. Even as a newborn, there was a wild certainty to her. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask permission. She simply moved through life like she had been born into motion, like stillness was something other people did. Faith didn't follow paths, she made them. She wasn't born to be careful or compliant. She was born to leap, to trust her gut, and to never look back. From the very beginning, there was no doubt. This was a soul sent not to observe, but to do. In very little time, Faith was wandering further than any of her siblings and coming close to the edge of the nesting area and close to the maze where only the chosen were allowed. She had been called nervously back from the nesting area many times, from the area many times, but the voice in her head continued to whisper, "Keep moving. Your best life waits just around the corner." She looked around at those in her village and realized they lived a life of anxiously awaiting. They waited to be picked, to be found worthy enough for the maze. They did nothing with their present other than allowing it to pass them by. Simply added as another day, not among the chosen. The present went from relevant to seemingly non-existent. Love explained how hard it was on Faith to understand fully that those she knew and loved had so clearly been left behind. That the others who lived in this maze were provided with a life filled with cheese that was delivered like manna from heaven each day. Where if you were the lucky one, lucky enough to be chosen, it would be like hitting a mouse lottery. All that would be left was to simply find cheese in the places where it fell. They lived their lives according to the teachings of the sacred tale and made changes in their lives according to where the cheese was, where it would come from, where they could get the most of it, and what simple challenges they faced in making these things happen. Life in the maze was a given, and the pursuit of cheese was all that mattered in the lives of most mice, with few exceptions to the rule. The legends, the mice discussed in whispers. Logic was one of those exceptions. One of those exceptions, discovered that it was the keepers who managed the maze, monitoring the mice and using them for their experiments. Apostole, another of these legends, spoken of in whispers, believed the maze itself and all its confines were insignificant. Since the maze itself was immaterial, she was able to walk through the walls of it as she pleased. Larget simply needed more space than the maze provided, and with that knowledge, she burst through a wall, breaking free to find the room she required. The way you got into the maze was more chance and luck than preparation or ability. The ancestors of those families of mice were caught in the wild and taken to the maze, which only a few had ever found their way out of. The children born into those families lived and died in the maze until their family lines were no more, or they were no longer needed by the keepers of the maze. The mice living in the maze never thought of these things. Their lives continued within the walls of the maze. This was the land of good and plenty, and life as such would go on and on and on, because the best life, the life in the maze, was a given, or so it would seem. Love continued telling the story of her friend. Faith was being called to the land behind the nesting area, the furthest edge of the land away from the maze, the land of Never Never, from where no other mouse had ever returned. Faith never questioned if those mice weren't seen again due to death, unforeseen circumstance, or defining their best life. She simply believed what the voice whispered and knew she needed to find out. When she asked questions of her parents and elders as to why no one knew what lay in the land outside of the maze, she was told it didn't matter. There was nowhere else to go that was safe for a mouse. That any mouse headed in the direction of Never Never was never heard from again, and the only thing out there was death. She would die alone, without comfort, without family or friends, and without ever having tasted cheese. Faith believed her existence was destined for more than just the pursuit of cheese. She felt a higher power had placed her here with a greater purpose beyond living in a maze. Power only they had to give. Life permitted to happen to you, not caused by you, and lived according to the rules provided by the sacred tale and the keepers of the maze. Faith's thoughts turned inward. She began a reflection of her life to this point. She realized that the mice she was surrounded by had been infected with thoughts of how easy life was in the maze. One morning, like every other morning before, Faith woke, dressed, kissed her parents, and left, not knowing if she would be able to find her way back to get the ones she loved or if there was a place she could find to take them to. Maybe she would die in or on her way to Never Never, but she knew she had to try. She traveled light. She believed that since this was her life and what she felt so strongly in her heart she was being called to do, she had no thoughts other than those of her success in finding a land of plenty for herself and the family she had left behind. She traveled long. On her path, she met a fellow traveler, Hope. Hope. Faith sat quietly for a moment, the flames painting shadows across her face. Her breath finally even again. The tears that had fallen were drying now, caught in the corners of her lashes like dew. Love's hand still rested in hers, a silent tether. Thank you, Faith whispered, her voice stronger now, though still soft. You carried the hardest part for me. Love simply nodded, offering a quiet squeeze before letting go. Faith sat a little taller, grounding herself in the weight of the moment. She turned toward the group, her eyes clear now, glowing with something deeper than firelight. I don't know how long I was alone, but the weight of the loneliness disappeared after I found her, she began again. She looked across the circle to Hope, who met her gaze with the smallest smile, one filled with memory and compassion. I met Hope after those long days on the trail, Faith said. It was dusk. I was exhausted, mind, body, spirit. I'd walked until my feet went numb, until the silence became a companion instead of punishment. She paused, then chuckled. And then I heard a sound I hadn't heard in days, humming in the middle of nowhere. Hope gave a soft laugh. I wasn't even trying to be heard. No, Faith agreed, but I needed to hear you.
Ashley said she's here, and she ran a little late, but she loved your book.
Okay, thank you. Turn that fan on, she's so hot. I followed the sound and found her standing near a crooked juniper tree, packing wildflowers into a strap of her satchel like they were treasure. She looked up at me like she had been there waiting all along. Hope leaned forward, her eyes bright with memory. You said, "Are you real?" And I said, "I was just about to ask you the same thing." The group chuckled quietly. I told her my story, Faith continued, how I'd been hearing that voice since birth, how I knew, not believed, but knew that life beyond the maze was possible, that there was more than cheese, more than status, more than wandering tight quarters, hoping for a reward I was never given access to. Faith paused, swallowing the lump returning to her throat. And Hope, she didn't laugh. She didn't ask if I was lost. She didn't try to fix it. No, Hope said gently, because I'd been waiting to hear someone say it out loud. Hope stared into the fire, her gaze distant, as if the flames held echoes of a past only she could hear. The flickering light painted her features in amber and shadow, softening the lines of someone who had once believed too hard, too long. Hope began speaking slowly, her voice drifting like smoke, barely above a whisper. I was raised on the outer edge of the maze, in a nesting area the elders called Threshold. Her eyes didn't leave the fire. It was far from where Faith grew up. We'd never met, not then. Our corners of the maze were separated by walls, thick ones. But even if our paths didn't cross, our stories, they rhymed. The group leaned in subtly, their bodies still, the air shifting with her truth. I used to sneak away, she continued, slip out of the watch zones and climb the old scaffolding near the back wall where the light hit different, where the view stretched just far enough to show you everything you were never supposed to see. Her lips curled slightly, just a sliver of sky, but it felt like the whole universe if you squinted right. Awara glanced at her, intrigued. What did you see? Hope's smile faded, her voice dipping low. The promise, the hunger, the cycle. She swallowed hard. I'd watched the mice line up for hours, every single day, lined up just for a chance to be accepted by a system that had no love for them. They called it opportunity, but it wasn't. It was extinction, dressed up like existence. Elodie shifted uncomfortably, rubbing her worry stone between her fingers. Gachu's ears gave a subtle twitch. I wanted so badly to believe in it, Hope confessed, her voice breaking gently, that if I just followed the rules, stayed quiet, smiled when I was overlooked, worked harder than everyone else, that the maze would reward me. She looked around the fire, her eyes shimmering. I believed if I was clever enough, obedient enough, good enough, that one day I'd turn the corner and the maze would open wide, that there'd be a light, a door, a way in. She paused, but it never did. Her words landed like soft thunder, not even an inch. Just smoke and mirrors, more closed doors with different names. Faith reached across the circle and gently laid a hand over hers. What changed? She asked softly. Hope inhaled slowly, as if pulling breath from the very earth beneath her. I stopped asking the maze to see me and started seeing myself. She looked up, and in her eyes was a different kind of fire, one that didn't flicker or fade. Not all at once, but enough to know that the only way out wasn't forward, it was through. Through the lies, through the illusion, through myself. Serene gave a quiet nod, the blade of grass in her mouth barely moving. Takes guts to stop running towards something and finally stand still. Hope smiled at her, the warmth returning. The fire crackled as if it too bore witness to the quiet revolution of a heart that once chased approval and now walked in purpose. Faith picked up the thread again, voice steady and sure. We walked together after that, not fast, not with a map, just two mice who had once been told to stay in line, now walking out of it. As we traveled, hope started to change, not because of me, but because she gave herself permission to believe in more. She began imagining what didn't yet exist, a place beyond the maze, a town built on vision, not rules, a life shaped by meaning, not metrics. Hope's voice softened. I didn't need someone to show me the way. I just needed someone to believe I could make it. And around a bend, Faith said, a smile, eyes landing warmly on Love, we found her. The group turned towards Love, whose curls caught the firelight like a crown. A hush fell over the group again, not from tension, but from reverence, the kind that arises when truth has been spoken. And there, in that glowing circle of warmth, it became clear. Faith had taken the first step, hope had followed the vision, and love had always been waiting. Together, they had begun the world that would become fulfillment realized, not just a place on the map, but a home born from the courage to leave the maze behind. Love. The fire crackled low, casting flickering gold across the faces gathered in the clearing. It was Hope's turn to pick up the story now. She leaned forward, legs tucked beneath her, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of lavender tea. Her voice carried that easy rhythm she always had, like wind through tall grass, slow and steady, but impossible to ignore. I remember exactly how we met her, Hope began, glancing at Faith, who nodded with a quiet smile. We'd been walking for days, just the two of us, Hope said. Faith had the voice that led us, and I had the vision to believe it, but neither of us expected to find her. She paused, letting the moment return to her fully. We were rounding a bend in the path, just past the ridge where wild mint grew thick underfoot, and there she was. Hope's eyes sparkled as she continued. She wasn't walking, she was just there, standing in the middle of the path like she'd bloomed from the ground itself. Around the fire, the others leaned in closer. She wasn't looking at us, Hope said. She was looking at a single flower, one of those starburst lilies that grow along the trail. She held it like it was something sacred, and the breeze was playing in her curls, teasing that piece headband of hers right down over one eye. Hope smiled at the memory, and still, she smiled like she saw everything clearly. Faith chuckled, nodding. We didn't say a word, not at first. I was too stunned, Hope admitted, because she didn't just stand there. She radiated something different. She was completely still, but somehow it felt like she was in motion, like peace was moving through her. Hope lowered her voice, mimicking the soft cadence of their first conversation. You ever seen anything so bold? She asked, still staring at that flower. And then she finally looked up at us, right into us. Around the fire, Love smiled and added gently, it had fallen just a few feet from the path. Most folks would have stepped right over it. Hope nodded. She told us she picked it up because it deserved to be honored, that something that beautiful shouldn't go unnoticed just because it was lying low. Some things are only seen by those who are still enough to notice, Faith echoed quietly, quoting Love's words from that day. Hope continued, her voice full of warmth now. That was the moment I knew she was part of this. She hadn't just found the flower, she'd found us. The fire popped, sending a burst of sparks skyward like punctuation to the story. She listened to everything, Hope said. Faith's vision, the voice that guided her, my obsession with a better life, a freer one we hadn't seen, but we were daring to dream. Love spoke softly now, her tone laced with memory. And when I heard your stories, it was like the missing piece in mine slid into place. I hadn't left my nesting area just to escape. I left because I always knew I was meant to help build something bigger than the maze, bigger than me. She looked around the circle, eyes shining. Meeting you two wasn't coincidence. It was a call I'd been following even before I had language for it. Hope reached over and took Faith's paw. We became a trio that day, not because we planned it, but because the universe recognized something in us and brought us together. Faith lifted her head again and added, that was the moment we stopped walking for ourselves and started walking for something greater. Hope nodded. We knew that if the world we'd imagined didn't exist yet, we'd build it. Around the fire, a reverent stillness settled, broken only by the rustle of the wind through the trees and the soft crackle of flame. And there, under a canopy of stars, in a clearing that felt more like sanctuary than wilderness, everyone present understood. This was no ordinary journey. This was a blueprint being written by brave hearts, a story of three who walked away from the maze, not in search of permission, but in pursuit of possibility. and the work of fulfillment realized had already begun. And that's where we're ending for tonight.
Ashley says
Yes.
that you need to make this into a movie.
I'm sorry, what? Thank you for the vote of confidence, but as soon as I can sell a couple of books, then we can talk about the movie. But thank you very much.
She would like you to keep reading.
No. What?
She said no.
Hold on.
She said it's for ending.
What? We said what?
She said no. Allison said it's getting so good.
Okay, we're gonna finish it up. But how much time do we have?
Ashley said I bought mine. Desiree says she loves this so much.
Okay, we'll finish it up in the next couple of weeks, because if I go back to reading it, we're gonna finish the rest of the story. So remember that we're also talking about the accompanying workbook. So there's a couple of questions in here that I wanted to go over. I'm glad that you guys like it. Thank you so much. There are 2 other books with it. So when we get through with this one, the good thing about being on here live is that you guys will get the first peek at the next book, the second book in the series. So this is a trilogy. There's 3 books: What Cheese, Fulfillment Realized, and The Path of Least Resistance. And because you're subscribed and you're here live, you get to hear all of them before they get ready to come out. Well, the next 2 before they come out.
Allison said yay.
All right. Yay. Okay. I'm glad she's excited. This one is talking about, this section 3 is talking about the middle of the maze. So there's a couple of things in this guided workbook, that I think everybody will appreciate. It gives you the opportunity to journal and gives you the opportunity to go over some of those questions that are at the end of the book, which we'll get to soon. And I think I did the first time we did some of the reading. So Serene, awakening purpose. Her insight is that I almost forgot why I started walking. Purpose fades when the maze feels endless. But when I listened again to the whisper inside, I remembered I was made for more than wandering. The teaching reflection in this chapter is Serene represents the rediscovery of purpose. Many times in life, we lose sight of why we began a journey. Our dreams become buried under daily demands, distractions, or disappointments. This chapter invites you to pause, listen deeply, and reconnect with the voice of purpose inside you. Purpose is not a final destination, but a compass that steadies us when we feel lost. So in this thing, there's a discovery purpose worksheet where you write down 3 areas of your life. And it can be anything: career, relationship, personal growth. For each thing, you want to ask yourself that question: what feels most alive to me here? And so in your relationship, what feels most alive to you there? In your career, if you're working, what feels most alive to you there? And in your personal growth, what are you working on most? There's also a little exercise in here that talks about dream rekindling, where you can write about one dream you set aside or abandoned. And the question here is, why did you let it go? And what would it take to revisit it now? That's an interesting question. So a dream that you set aside, I'm going to go back to me wanting to be a mortician, which with Doc Richards, wherever she happens to be tonight. But she grew up and got married, and we did not open our mortuary or become morticians. And so now we're doing Memory Marquee, where we still give people the ability to tell their legacy. And so it's one of my dreams that was set aside that I get to revisit here. And the reason I let that go is, 1, well, she got married, and 2, because life be lifing. So sometimes things get in the way of the dreams that we had solid and believed that that's what we were going to chase. So what it took to revisit it was seeing it in another way. So the movies of people's lives, helping them create their stories, helping them create the legacy that they'll leave for everyone to see and for everyone to hear. I think that is the dream, just in a different shape. So does anybody else have one?
Alva said she knew that was coming.
Knew what was coming?
That story.
The mortician?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Desiree said, what? It's nice.
I did. We're supposed to be morticians. This is going to sound really morbid, but there's money in death. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be able to show people things that in their time of need, kindness, and understanding that you don't have to have things in the way that everybody wants you to. All right. So with that, we are going to wrap this up. Are there any questions or anything that we have? Any comments? Anybody? Oh, okay.
She says she gave him a dancing and she really regrets it.
Get back into it, Tiny Tots. Whenever you say dancing, I think of Allison in her little red and white tutu doing her little thing. Tiny Tots dancers.
Desiree
Yes.
said she wanted to be a dolphin trainer in Florida, but then she went there in the summer.
And Florida is like hell on earth. I apologize for anybody who lives there, but going to Florida for the first time in the summer is a mistake that I wish I never made either. So, yeah, you have to pick a different time of year to go down there so you can fully appreciate what's happening.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was terrible.
To your comment.
Oh, to the Tiny Tots and the red and white and the antlers. Yeah, I remember all of that. So, yeah. All right. There's an announcement that I want to make. A couple of things have changed. So we now have, is it 7 different channels on socials? So we've moved some things, split some things apart. So now What Cheese is part of Peace Publications, which is listed on, Instagram at Peace Publications. And is it TikTok? TikTok. At Peace Publications. So you can find some of our stuff there. More information about the What Cheese book, and then some of the information about the other books and the publications that we have coming. So those will be separated from Anger Whisperer. We also have, Anger Whisperer has 4 channels. Let me just say that. So Anger Whisperer on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course here on YouTube. And then we also have Memory Marquee, which is at Memory Marquee on YouTube. At Memory Marquee on TikTok. Okay, right? No? Is Memory Marquee Instagram? No, Memory Marquee is TikTok and YouTube. Okay, and then the other one is Peace Publications, which is YouTube and also Instagram, TikTok and Instagram. Jesus Christ. Okay. So all of those things. So we'll have them all in the description here. There's 3 different things. Peace Publications, which is where you can find What Cheese and information about the next 2 books. And then Anger Whisperer on all the socials. And then the last one, which is Memory Marquee, where you can go and check us out at Memory Marquee on YouTube and Memory Marquee on TikTok. All right. So all of those things being said, we are going to kind of not change the direction, but Wednesdays, you'll always have the lives here. We may continue with the live readings because this is the only place that we can do them. So we'll finish up this book and we'll get started on the next one here in the next couple of weeks. But we have a little side note. There is going to be an announcement next week, which is the 17th. Yes. And a gender reveal for my grandbaby that's coming up. All right. So all of those things will be happening on the YouTube live next week at 5:00. Same bad time, same bad channel. Please join us there. We'd love to have you. Everybody have a wonderful week. And if you have any questions, find us on one of those social channels.
Said it's a girl.
Okay. I think it is too. I'm kind of hoping because, this will be the 5th one and we only have 1 girl so far. Okay. We will see. So next week, all of those things will be discussed. All right. In the meantime, make sure that you guys check us out at Anger Whisperer. We're offering, what are those calls? We're doing 6 peace audit calls a day. So make sure that you book those with us and we can get you into the right program, coaching program, so that we can start the year off strong and in peace. All right. For everybody that I know, thank you for coming in. For everybody that I don't, thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome. Signing off as Shawnnyce Nutt, the Anger Whisperer. We'll see you guys on the other side. And are we out? It's going to be a blue.